Welcome back to another video from Not Only Trout. If you haven't taken a moment, please go ahead and click subscribe for more fly tying videos. In this video, we're going to go ahead and tie up a sparkly parachute Adams variant. In the vise, we have a Moonlit ML053 hook in size 14. We're using some Semperfli Nano Silk in 12/0 or 50 denier, whatever you want to call it. What we're doing is we're going ahead and putting a small thread bump about 1/3 the way back from the hook eye along the shank, and make a little bump, and then take some poly yarn and tie it in nice and tight. 2 wraps right in the middle of it, cinch it down tight. Do a couple more wraps around it, and then do a couple wraps in front of it. A couple more wraps over the tight to better lock it into place. And then start wrapping around the poly yarn. You're going to do some wraps that are just right on top of the hook shank, but wrapping around that poly yarn post. And you'll see that as we tighten it up, it's going to go ahead and make that post look better and better. And we're just going to keep wrapping until we go up about an eye length, maybe 2 eye lengths up the hook, or up the poly yarn post. And then we'll start wrapping our way back down. When we get close to the bottom, we're just going to go ahead and do 2 wraps to lock everything into place. And you'll see that I trapped a couple of fibers, so just go ahead and trim those out, make things pretty. Be careful not to snip your thread. I just almost did. Once we have that on there, we're going to go ahead and grab a couple fibers, a couple barbels from a rooster feather. And we're going to measure that out to be about a hook length in total length. And we're going to go ahead and just tie that in at that 1 hook length. And once we get that tied in, man, this poly yarn was left too long. I'm going to trim that up in just a second after I get this tied in. So we get that tied in, get our tail on top of the hook, pull out a couple poly yarn fibers, they're getting trapped. So lesson to the wise, make your poly yarn post a little shorter than what I did or it gets in the way. So I'm going to trim that real quick, make my life a little bit easier. Now that we have our tail on there, we're just going to wrap back to the curve of the hook. And we're going to grab some light gray starburst fibers that come from Fly Tyer's Dungeon. And we're going to dub our hook just like we normally would, trying to keep things pretty concise and pretty tight. You see me putting some dubbing on right here. And I'll just wrap that up to the eye of the hook and then back a little bit, building kind of a nice little tapered body. Add a little bit more dubbing on so I can make it the rest of the way up. Just jump around that post, go towards your eye. I lost my noodle there a little bit, so let's tighten that noodle back up. We're just going to wrap around that, building a little base around our post. And you'll see that I dropped the thread right in front of the hook, on my side of the hook, on that poly yarn post. What I'm going to do now is go ahead and grab 2 feathers. These come from a Whiting 100 pack. And just tie those in by the stems. I stripped a little bit off the stem to make it a little bit easier to tie in. And I'm just grabbing a little bit of UV resin to dab on the stems right there, help them stay in a little bit better. And then I'm going to trim off the excess stem so I don't have too much stem showing. Now that that's trimmed off, I'm going to grab my feathers, lock them in place one more time with another tight wrap. Then I'm going to grab my 2 feathers. They both have the shiny side up, not down, and wrap them around that poly yarn post a couple of times. I think I do it 3 times. And then what I'll do is I'll take that thread that's in front of the hook and wrap it underneath the fibers, but above the hackle that I'm using. Do that 2 times, lock it in tight. Then I can rotate my vise and go ahead and snip out my hackles. Got to be very careful here not to snip off too many of the little barbels from the feathers. Now that that's done, I can rotate back down, and I can go ahead, use the UV light to cure the thread wraps and the UV resin that's in there. And then I can go ahead, grab my whip finish tool, and whip finish vertically instead of, or whip finish horizontally instead of vertically, You can rotate your fly in the vise at this point if you want. I just went ahead and did a horizontal whip or a vertical whip finish going around that post. Pull thread tight, snip it off, and you have an almost completed fly. The last thing you want to do is go ahead and trim that poly arm post a little bit shorter. I like to go about a hook gap length or so. And snip. And now we're done. Please check the description for links to all the materials used to tie this fly. Thank you.